Hola, soy Berenice Hernán. Esto es Península 360. Esta es una serie de entrevistas a los candidatos y las candidatas al Consejo de la ciudad de Redwood City. Las entrevistas constan de 9 preguntas, las mismas para todos los aspirantes, los cuales tendrán 1 minuto para contestar. Hoy hablaremos con Jeff G., quien es candidato para el Distrito número 1. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you so much for being here. My first question for you is, why do you want to be on City Council? ¿Por qué quieres ser concejal?
Very good, Bernice. Thank you. You know, I've served on the council before, and what's really different this time is really COVID and the pandemic. I've been fortunate that I've kept working through the shelter in place, and so safety is very, very important. And we've learned very quickly how to work and keep everybody safe. So community safety, community health is really, really critical. The second thing is social justice. Prior to or earlier when COVID came out, there was a lot of anti-Asian xenophobia. And now with Black Lives Matter and the vilification of the Latin community, we need to work together to really tackle the social justice issues because there are systemic and institutional barriers. Housing, we need more housing at all levels, affordable housing, supportive housing, transitional housing. And I serve on a nonprofit housing developer where we have currently 5,000 units of housing, affordable housing in place, and 1,200 more units in construction and design. And we're working to build our capacity to deliver 4,000 units more over the next 5 years. So we want to bring that expertise to the council. And lastly, I think the hard part that we are all going to realize in the near future is the economy and the economic consequences. There's going to be federal stimulus dollars, but we cannot tax our way out of this recovery. We cannot cut services. So we need to work really hard to figure out what we can do to stimulate the economy, and having infrastructure projects ready for stimulus dollars is going to be very, very important to recover and put people back to work and create jobs.
Okay. Esta es la primera vez que vamos a tener una elección distrital. ¿Nos puedes decir cuál es la diferencia?
Great question, because the last 2 elections in 2009 and 2013, they were citywide. And to walk the entire city, you can't do that in several weekends. When I walked with my colleagues that were running for election at the time. We started walking, going door to door in June. And we walked every weekend, Saturday and Sunday. It's a lot of work and that's a lot of time. By running in a district, we can be more focused. We don't need to be walking every weekend. We can spend more time at the doors before COVID, talking to our neighbors. You can spend a month going to door to door instead of 3 months. And you can really focus on representing your district. I've lived in Redwood Shores my entire life, basically. I've lived there for 25 years. I went to school in the schools there. I know Redwood Shores. And I don't need to raise a lot of money like we used to when we're running citywide. So it really changes the dynamics to be very focused. At the same time, if we are elected, if I'm so honored to be elected, I understand we need to represent all of Redwood City. And so we have to go beyond our district to make sure that we represent the needs of the other districts that haven't voted for us.
¿Cuáles crees que son los principales problemas que enfrenta la comunidad latina en tu distrito?
Well, the Latino community in Redwood Shores is actually pretty small. The larger demographic in Redwood Shores is actually the Asian Pacific Islander community. And so the issues of there is engagement. It's actually more larger than just the API community, but I'll focus on the API community first. I would say that a good number, and the census this year will show that the API community, Asian, which includes Indian, Middle Eastern, will be larger than it was in 2010 from just seeing people out walking and riding their bikes and things like that. So it will be very interesting to see that. What the API community struggles with in Redwood Shores is engagement and communication. One of the things I struggled with is that I was an advocate for making sure that materials published by City Hall were in Chinese. We were able to get publications and newsletters in Spanish, but when it came to the Chinese community, the word I was given was, there's not enough of you. That was not acceptable. And so I'm a strong advocate for inclusion, and that I think in the San Mateo County area, in my work at the API caucus, we are actually the largest demographic in San Mateo County, representing over 30% of the population. And so we do count, we do matter. The other dynamic is that Redwood Shores is not physically connected to Redwood City, and so we need to build a stronger bridge by having a voice at City Hall, which I believe I can do.
¿Cómo te le vas a acercar a la comunidad latina?
Again, I think in Redwood Shores, the key is to reach out to the API voters and to engage the Chinese, the Koreans, the Indian voters, voter registration and things like that, door-to-door communication, but specific to the Chinese voters, working with the Chinese media, newspaper, radio, social media, and trying to reach them through those channels, because that's what they listen to. And it's going to be even an interesting dynamic with the president sort of banning WeChat, which the API community, the Chinese community uses a lot as of Sunday. So that's going to be a really different dynamic. But going door to door and using my Chinese name, and the Chinese community does know me because I have represented the Chinese community as an elected official during my prior 2 terms on council. There's a lot of pride with that.
¿Qué has hecho antes con la comunidad latina y otras comunidades de color?
That's a great question, and thank you for that. As I've talked about the API community, I have built bridges across many of the communities, particularly with the Latino community. Been a strong supporter of our organizations in Redwood City. I love what Casa Ciclo Cultural does. Their support of families, support of children, and the programs that I'm a big supporter of that. I support Mexico Vivo and what they've done to preserve culture and their through dance and through art. I've stood with DACA to make sure that our dreamers have a pathway. And so that part of our community, which is a very large part of Redwood City, is hugely important. I remember after the 2016 election, there was a rally downtown, and there were a lot of sad people, and there was a lot of fear also, and we need to support all of our communities. So the social justice issues are very real right now, and we need to work together across all communities to make sure we stand together to lead change.
¿Qué opinas de la justicia social en Redwood City?
I'm sad to say that here we are in 2020 in San Mateo County and Redwood City. There are institutional barriers and racism. There's no question about it in my mind. You know, I've led and worked and done a lot of different things in our communities and in the region. When I mentioned earlier about COVID, I can tell a story about a countywide elected official who's Chinese in San Mateo was coming out of his bank, minding his own business. And a person came up to him and yelled, "Go home, go back where you came from." Here in San Mateo County in 2020. It is just as relevant in Redwood City, where I served on the SamTrans board of directors, and there was advocacy for a new bus line to service a high school. And when we do things like that, we need to find resources to do that, and it takes time. One advocate came out and just said, "I'm ready to demand more bus service for the white community and take away from the brown ones." This is real now, and it's very sad, and we have to work together. Black Lives Matter they deserve the focus right now, but the vilification of the Latinx community, the xenophobia, we really need to work together to stand up. And there are institutional barriers to civic engagement. I know where they are, and I know how to work to get this taken care of. It will take time, but it will take us working together, and I'm willing to be part of that leadership to help that change.
¿Cuáles son los obstáculos del compromiso social en Redwood City y cuáles son tus estrategias para afrontarlos?
I'm sad to say there are. One great example is in the city's appointments to its boards, commissions, and committees. During my last couple of years on the city council, I took a look at who we appointed to its boards, commissions, and committees. And it was sad to say that while, let's just say, the Latinx community is 40% and the API community is 12% of the demographics, the people that the city council appoints to its boards and commissions are 70% white, homeowners that live west of City Hall. We need to look hard at who we appoint, who we recruit, and what we do to encourage and build a pipeline of future boards, commission, and committee members so they can participate in city government and hopefully become city council members in the future. But I was not successful in persuading my council members that we need to look at this. They chose, rather, the majority chose, we don't want to know. We don't really want to look that hard. And so if I am so honored to be elected again, I will lead that fight with my council colleagues to say, we need to look at this and we need to see what we can do differently. And through my work with the API caucus, we've been able to have that conversation with city council members across the entire region to say, we need to take a look at what we're doing to see if we are, whether they're biases, their institutional barriers, whatever they may be, we need to take a look at this. And if we need to make a difference and make a change, we need to make that change. They've been great conversations to have across the county.
¿Cómo harás para que las políticas en Redwood City sean más abiertas a la inclusión y la diversidad?
It's about listening, and it's about pushing back on those that want to make it exclusive. It's working with the different communities that make up of Redwood City. There are those that are fearful of change. And it's sad to say that no matter how fearful we may be, you've heard the word and the saying, change is inevitable. And so we need to figure out how to make change safe, how to learn from each other, and how to work with each other. It's just very hard, particularly at this time with COVID, the social justice issues, the wildfires, the anxiety caused by distance learning. Everybody is extremely anxious. There's high anxiety. The more we can moderate some of these things and remove the unknowns and give certainty, the better we can be when we're listening to each other and working with each other. To get things done, it really needs everybody to work together. And so it's more than just voting yes or no. We got to be boots on the ground to the extent we can safely in this environment. Maybe listen to each other from 6 feet apart, because I think Zoom is great, but it still doesn't replace the in-person connections that we can make, and really build those bridges. This community is divided right now, not by my choice, but others, and we need to find ways to work together to break down those walls and barriers.
De ser elegido, ¿qué harás para la comunidad latina en los próximos 4 años?
I'm continuing to do the work I have been doing for the last 5 to 8 years, is just going to the Latino community, asking them, listening to them, working with them, showing up with them, and just being a part of their community. One of the greatest pleasures I had was helping Hialeah become a sister city with Redwood City. It sat dormant for many, many years, and Mayor Siebert and I and a couple other council members finally championed that during our last year. That was extremely important to the families that immigrated from Hialeah and still have families, and that connection. Ciudad Guzman is another sister city, to go back and visit with them and to support Colima. We need to continue to do that and build those bridges and reinforce those bridges, because those cultural connections, those family connections, those social connections are of great importance. And the Latino community is such a big part of Redwood City. We need to embrace and work together. And I have done that. I pledge to continue to do that if I'm so honored in November.
Thank you for taking the time to be here, Jeff. No se vayan a perder la próxima entrevista con otro candidato para el Consejo de la Ciudad de Redwood City.